Good evening, everyone. I call to order the meeting of the Town Commission on January 7th, 2009 at 6 p.m. Tracy, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Bessler.
Here.
Mayor Cause.
Here.
Commissioner DeHassett.
Present.
Vice Mayor Magruder.
Here.
And Commissioner Sloat.
Present.
Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let's start just first. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope everyone's holidays went well, and the New Year's off to a good start. Before we get to our actual agenda items and the rest of it, why don't we introduce our county commissioner? Okay.
Do you want to just first address additions, deletions, modifications, make sure there's no...
Good point. Are there any additions, deletions, and modifications to the agenda?
No.
Anybody want to do an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Do we hear a vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion moves. Okay, I'm pleased to introduce County Commissioner Robert Weinroth, who's going to address us.
Thank you very much, Mayor Cause, and hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to come on up and say hello. As you know, I am the new Stephen Abrams. Stephen was termed out, and as of November 20th, I'm the District 4 Commissioner. And it's my pleasure to be of service to this commission and to this town and to this district. You may know that I was on the City Council in Boca Raton, so I understand from whence you sit and your issues, and I want you to know I'm a strong supporter of home rule. And that's not only home rule as far as the state is concerned with the municipalities, but also the county with the municipalities. So it's my promise that I will not be getting in your business unless you ask me to come and help you with things that are going on between you and the county. And I think that we will have a good collaborative relationship in that way. And Mayor Cause, congratulations on your new assignment.
Thank you.
And again, I'm really just here to introduce myself. Having 4 years of experiencing there, I know that you have a lot of things to do and you don't need to listen to me too long. So thank you very much for allowing me just to introduce myself. If there are any questions, I'd certainly be happy to take them.
Any questions? Thank you. Appreciate you coming and addressing us.
My pleasure.
Tracy?
And the announcements are Town Hall will be closed on Monday, January 21st in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting will be held on Monday, January 14th at 8:30 a.m. at Town Hall. And the next regular Town Commission meeting will be held on Monday, February 4th at 6 p.m. at Town Hall. The municipal election will be held on March 12th, 2019. There is one Town Commission seat open for a 3-year term and one Town Commission seat open for a 1-year term. Qualified candidates are Steve Cause, Susan Hurlbert, and John Lipscomb Jr. Land Development Code and Charter Amendment referendum questions will also be on the ballot. Residents who wish to add their name to the email blast list to receive important town notifications should sign up on the sheet provided on the counter in the lobby or notify the town clerk. The Town Commission will appoint a resident to fill an alternate member vacancy on the Board of Adjustment at the February 4th, 2019 meeting. Residents who wish to serve on the Board of Adjustment should submit a letter of interest and resume to the town clerk by January 28th, 2019.
Perhaps you could describe the Board of Adjustments, what the Board of Adjustments actually does, so everyone understands.
The Board of Adjustment hears variance applications and also appeal applications.
And it meets very infrequently.
Yes.
Okay, public comment. It's 15-minute maximum and 3 minutes per individual. Yes, Happy New Year to you.
Joe Belmonte, 5600 North Ocean Boulevard, and Happy New Year to everybody. And I just want to say that a long time ago, I used to be involved in the hotel business, and everything flows through the front desk, the poor people at the front desk. When maintenance goes home at 5 o'clock, who takes care of maintenance in the rooms? People from the front desk have to go up and do it. What about the drunks that come out of the bar after everybody goes home? Front desk people have to do it. What about handing out the towels to the people at the beach when the pool boy goes home or pool girl goes home? People at the front desk. And I just want to say that in a town like this, in most towns, that after the people of the town come up with great ideas and the board approves it, then the directives go in two directions, and one is to Jamie and one is to the police chief, who's looking younger every day, by the way. And so I just want to take a few seconds out to thank the people who sometimes are unheralded because all the work goes to them. And then while I'm thanking them, I want to thank everybody in the board because I know you get paid 5, maybe 10 cents an hour to do all this work. And so thanks everybody for being here and running the town for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary?
Solicited, I swear.
Terry Brown, Harbor Drive South. I just noticed that this is the first month that the building official has put a report in, is that correct? With data and number of permits? It's been bifurcated out from the town's?
Third month.
Okay. I read that, and I just thought it would be beneficial for the citizens and the residents to know what is happening on some of these projects that seem to be stalled. We don't want to reveal anything that's not public record, but you have a project at 6009. I know there's a dumpster there, and there's a blue tarp on the roof still. And then the one further north at 6227, is that the one that's been stopped for, seems like a year? If we knew just a little piece of information of why that's occurring, there's a financial problem, the permit's been rejected or pulled or whatever, then it would prevent people from asking me all the time what's going on. And then I have to come down and bug the people and call Lisa.
Or asking me.
Or ask her. Does that sound like a good idea? Yeah, not every month, but maybe every couple of months. The other thing I wanted to be sure that we were going to have public discussion at regular item number 6, the rules of order and procedure. We'll have public comment on that at
Well,
that
public
time?
comment, followed by commissioner
Okay.
discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. Whoop.
Hi, I'm Darlene Johnston, 26 Harbor Drive South. So I guess about a year and a half ago, you guys installed a pole. We have a problem on my block, and especially with all the construction that has been going on. People go, it's a 10-mile speed limit, and people are actually doing 30 to 40 miles. When they hit because I'm at the bottom of the hill, they gun it. And I've almost been run over in the evenings, in the morning, with my dog. And this is serious. You installed this pole to put a traffic to see the speed limit of people. Well, the pole is still there. Nobody has put that machine back in over a year and a half. I'm really concerned about this. The block is very dangerous. I'm thinking that a speed bump is the way to go. And they have portable speed bumps that even are harder than putting a fixed one in like you did at Beachway. So I'm asking, as a citizen that has almost been hit 3 times, and I've had to call the police because people literally almost ran me over, to consider this. And then I have one other thing I wanted to ask. Is there an ordinance that people have to take care of their grass? Because let me tell you something, there's maybe 4 or 5 families that have lawns still. The rest are all weeds. Some of the vacant lots, they're up to almost my knees, the weeds. And this is, you know, we pay a lot of money to take care of our homes. We live in a really lovely community. But somebody has to start enforcing, especially homes where people have them for sale, nobody's living in these homes, vacant lots, and then people that live there. Don't they have pride in their property? So thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I look forward to seeing some changes, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you. So Lieutenant Jones, you'll look into the speed camera?
Absolutely. The sign has moved around to various locations throughout the town. We just have 2 of those signs. So it is possible that it's been a while since that sign has been in that particular location.
And maybe,
We'll cycle it through to that location.
excellent. And maybe code enforcement.
It really did not do any difference. It did not deter anything.
I haven't finished yet, that's all. And maybe code enforcement could sweep through South Harbor, North Harbor, take a look at the situation. And Jamie, maybe you could take a look at the viability of a speed bump.
Yeah, we can bring you a proposal of what those costs. In fact, we already know that basic metric, so
Right.
it'll just be a matter of you guys approving it if you want to do that kind of
Very good.
installation.
Thank you.
Good evening. Todd Perry, 19 Harbor Drive South. Darlene and Terry are my neighbors, and I concur with her comments, and I'm very concerned about the issue of the high speed in such a short area. I'm right at the bottom of the little ridge there at Ocean Ridge, and cars, they fly over that hill, have no idea. It's a blind corner and a blind curve, and just a temporary speed bump, 1 or 2 up there, I think would really alleviate the problem and eliminate really a tragedy from happening, because those little girls next door play in the middle of the street all the time, and they're not gonna have any time to get out of the way. So I'm glad it's up for consideration. I support it 100%.
Thank you. And for your knowledge, the town is really up to speed on this because we've spent about a year investigating them. So Jamie will be on top of it.
I just want to add to,
Whoop, name and,
my name is Cindy Martell. I'm at 46 Harbor Drive South. I believe at the last meeting, somebody brought up sidewalks. We do not want a sidewalk. We don't want, none of the neighbors want sidewalks.
temporary sidewalk?
No, just a sidewalk to come in. So we just don't want that. Speed bumps, I think everybody agrees. If I go around, take a poll, all the neighbors agree about that. And I mean, that's what I can add. I mean, I've lived there for 21 years, and it's always been, and it's neighbors doing it too. I mean, my next door neighbor, it's an ongoing thing. So, I mean, we would love, I mean, a lot of the neighbors are coming in, new neighbors coming in with kids, would love a speed bump. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Happy New Year, Commissioners. Stella Kolb, 204 Beachway. I just want to piggyback on what the ladies had just said, just to let you know that I do live on Beachway, and we had speed humps, I believe they're called, not bumps, put in. There's a difference. And I'm just here to tell you that they actually work. So we may have to look into that, or you may have to look into that on different parts of town, because we used to have the same problem, and it really works. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. Anybody else? Okay. Tracy, will you read the consent agenda into the record?
Yes. Adopt the minutes of the regular town commission meeting of December 3rd, 2018. Authorize the budgeted expenditure of up to $80,000 to Bartow Ford for the purchase of 2 fully equipped police vehicles, and sign the Line Tech Incorporated contract for water service connections and restoration services.
Just one point of clarification, Mayor. The number 2 item under consent is the state contract, not necessarily Bartow Ford.
Correct.
Gotcha. Understand. Okay, do I hear a motion on approving the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, regular agenda items. First reading of ordinance number 2019-01. Tracy, maybe you could start this and then hand it to Brian.
Yes. First reading of ordinance number 2019-01, an ordinance of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, amending its code of ordinances by amending Chapter 67, Buildings and Building Regulations, Article 2, Coastal Construction, and Section 67-17, Coastal Construction and Excavation Setback Line, to provide that zoning confirmation approvals shall be issued by the building official and not the Town Commission, providing for codification, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
Okay, at your November meeting, you directed staff to come up with some changes regarding this item. If you remember, normally under CCCL approvals, it is, I don't think anybody's aware of where one has been denied, because the only thing that we look at is the zoning aspect of the property, all the building aspects, permitting, all of that stuff. they will still have to meet the town code when they come back after they get DEP approval. So this ordinance just allows the approval, rather than coming to town commission, to either go to the building official or town manager for approval, rather than coming to the town commission. And if you remember, under our concept plan review process, the project would go to concept plan first, and then after it comes back from concept plan, then it would go to, or then the building official could look at it and say, yes, it meets all the requirements, and then could send the zoning level letter of approval up to DEP to say, yes, say a single-family home can be built in this location, but they still have to meet all the town codes and ordinances. And so that's what this ordinance does.
Basically, for those people not familiar with this, we wasted a lot of time over the years at the commission meetings basically discussing something and then rubber stamping it. So we would no longer go through the rubber stamp step. It'll come to us or to the appropriate committee after it goes to the state. So do we need any discussion?
I've got, do you want to open up to public comment first?
Public comment. No one looked interested. Commissioners?
A couple of questions, and I discussed this with Brian and JB in the staff meeting. Does the town, and I think you just alluded to it, Brian, does the town have any LDRs in our code that talk about construction that's eastward of the CCCL?
Yes, in our code, well, we defer to, you first have to obtain approval from DEP. However, other than that, there is not any restrictions dealing with code sections specifically east of the CCCL line.
Okay, because one of the questions I had, and this is the follow-up question to that, is can a town have more stringent requirements as to building eastward of the CCCL than what is the minimum state requirement?
Yes, I mean, I think the state requirement just, if I'm not mistaken, just really applies to elevation.
Correct.
And so, yes, the town can have greater restrictions in particular zoning districts if you wish, if you are in a particular location in the town, and you could describe it as east of the CCCL line.
Because one of the things that we've been discussing as a town and also as a commission is potentially doing some additional dune plantings, looking at crossovers, making sure that we've got some sustainability kind of built into some of our stuff. So I think it might, and it probably does not conflict with this ordinance at all, but I think we might want to give a consideration of having planning and zoning take a look at, you know, what is it as a town that we are encouraging eastward of the CCCL without impeding upon somebody's property rights, which I understand are sovereign. But I mean, particularly is there, you know, in the past we've allowed a lot of dune encroachment. We've allowed a lot of pools and other buildings well beyond eastward of what was already there. Once they took down a unit, they went then another 100 feet closer to the ocean. And I just think, given the light that we've been looking as a town at tightening some of our LDRs and making sure that our LDRs are sustainable, you know, for the next go around, particularly as we do our comprehensive plan and look at our coastal element, I just would like to maybe have P&Z weigh in on taking a look at this and, you know, having some idea on it.
Any thoughts? Do we set ourselves up for a lose-lose? Because I'm hearing that the state and the DEP dictate this.
Well, I
And
think,
then when a homeowner goes and spends a lot of money on a property, and then we tell him he can't do what the state and DEP allow him to do.
well, regardless of what the state allows them to do, they still have to comply with all local codes. So different jurisdictions have different codes and different requirements. So as long as we, you know, this is kind of dealing with the same issue that we dealt with when we adopted some of our other codes, where we have to be cognizant of what's out there. However, can we take a look and see if there are some tweaks that we can make to our code regarding, structures or accessory structures east of the CCCL line? We can certainly do that. I'm sure there are other codes out there that address manners of that type. It's just it all depends on the type of code that you adopt. So that's what we just have to be careful about.
Would those properties or development that goes further east of the line, would that go before the variance board for approval, or does that just go through P and Z?
Well, if it meets their setbacks and their requirements, it would not they would not need a variance. However, if we modify your code to have certain restrictions or different things in there, then they might have to, but
So
if,
our standard setback on water is 75 feet?
I don't, is that, okay.
So it's 75 feet whether it's ocean, 75 feet if it's intercoastal, 75 feet if it happens to be a lake in your backyard. Okay.
Well, we could certainly, I agree with what you're attempting, and we should take a look at it, Brian. But it concerns me if somebody already has an oceanfront property and they go to sell it, and we've restricted during the course of their ownership, I see us getting involved in a pretty bad situation.
Where they can't build what it's my understanding, and I guess Commissioner DeHasseth can correct me, but I think you're kind of looking at something where in the past, maybe something has existed, but then what has been built has exceeded what is existing.
Correct.
And so I guess that's what we would be, if there is consensus, then I think, then we as staff, might be what we would be looking at to help, I guess, restrict or control some of that type of construction, but it depends on the direction that you want to give us.
And I'm not even saying restriction 100% on construction, but maybe building in additional things that are needed, additional dune plantings that are needing. It is such a different type of environment and field conditions than anything else in our entire town. I think we just need to be a little bit wiser as a town and a little bit more environmentally sensitive. So come up with a couple of different options.
And it could be conditions placed on if someone wants to build up to a certain level or distance, then there would be certain conditions that they would have to meet, which is quite common in a lot of codes too.
Yeah, it's almost like a mitigation.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe you could take a look at that with the staff, Brian?
Okay, yes, we can, and I'm sure the town manager and the staff, we can take a look at that and see what we can bring forward to P and Z. I guess, is that the
Is that the
consensus to
consensus?
kind of do
We
that?
have a consensus? on
Yes.
Yeah.
that? And
Okay,
you might come back and say no. You know,
Yes.
You can't, right, whatever.
So we'll hold off on that one.
No, it's a
No,
separate,
we're-
separate item.
We went on
That was a
tangent, I think.
tangent, right,
Okay.
a good tangent. Okay, anybody want to make a motion on ordinance number 2019-01 to move it?
I'll make a motion to pass ordinance regarding the CCL approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those who are negatives, say nay. Was it unanimous? I didn't catch everyone. Unanimously passed, okay. Okay.
Just a footnote, that'll come back next month as a second reading.
Yeah.
Since it's an ordinance for
Yeah.
everybody
Agenda item number 5. This is the 2019 pest control service contracts by our town manager, Jamie Titcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 contracts before you tonight for service contracts. I'll just go over them briefly as an overview. I have representatives from the 2 companies here this evening to address you and answer any questions you may have. One is for the no-see-um and mosquito spraying and services contract agreement that we've done for many, many years in the town. And the other is a brand-new pilot program at the request of this commission to consider trapping of iguana problem animals in the town. I have Daryl, I hope I don't mess this up, Biggiotti did I get that right? From Clark, who's here to talk about that and answer any questions. And I have Thomas Petrello, who's here from Iguana Control. These are the two principals or operatives for these companies behind these service agreements in front of you. Probably the most significant thing to remember about these contracts and why they've been reconfigured is historically the town used to provide services to all the properties in town and pay for that under an umbrella contract. And these new contracts are configured, they're beefed up to try to provide as much protection and eradication and control as possible, but only expending those funds on public properties, meaning rights-of-way, detention areas, streets, rights-of-ways, the little town-owned properties, et cetera, the right-of-ways between streets, et cetera. And then each company has offered essentially a preferred rate for a home opt-in service to continue on these services if they're having a particular problem on their property as it goes along. There's the option for our residents to opt in. Both types of services require an opt-in because we're using chemicals or we're using trapping methodologies or various things that require indemnification and permission to go on people's property, so that piece is separate. Both contracts, and I'll turn this over to introduce the folks from the companies, are scaled to try to accomplish the goals of the commission and fit within the budgetary restrictions of this year's budget program, and that's what you have in front of you today. You received an additional handout today, which is part of this package. That is the town attorney's boilerplate conditions and caveats that go with either of these service agreements should we execute them. And the companies are aware of those. They would become part and parcel of the executed contract should we move forward on that. So let me start with, since I have them in that order,
Can you maybe, Jamie, add in the price to the homeowner on each of those services?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. The current proposed contracts we have in your book, the townwide mosquito and no-see-um control contract is in at a public contract cost at $47,000 and change for individual homeowners to opt in for an annualized service. The projected cost right now is $465 annual for a home, but there will probably be a small administration fee on that to actually administer the billing and notification and registration process. In the case of the Iguana Control Company, the program that's proposed there in the public spaces of the town is $1,600 a month, so the annualized cost is $19,600. It's a 30-day out on that at any time. And the proposed cost for home treatment of iguanas above and beyond the public program is about $950 a year, which is approximately $79 a month if you were to opt into that service as a private homeowner. I know that's a good deal because we've priced iguana trapping, and it's about $189 or higher per trap if you go out and do it on that kind of metric. So with that said, I have representatives from both companies here to answer any technical or operational or logistical questions you may have about what the service is, how it works, anything else where I can try to, but I'd like to at least introduce them and have them.
So we'll have them speak, then we'll do public comment,
Sure.
then we'll come back to us.
Daryl, you want to start? Daryl's from Clark Chemical, which is the town's provider of mosquito and no-see-um control services.
Good evening, Daryl Pachai with Clark. I want to thank you all for allowing us to service the town of Ocean Ridge here for many years for the mosquito and no-see-um control. So we've been working with Jamie on this program. We are changing the program slightly from servicing the public areas and the residential areas into the public areas here. So that's what you see in front of you today of what we could offer the public. We're taking more of an integrated approach. In our proposal here, we're looking at trapping and surveying mosquitoes. Then we're looking at tackling the mosquito in a specific life stage of their cycle in the larva stage, which is the catch basins and the G30 applications where these mosquitoes breed and where the larvae are found. And then we'd also offer the adulticiding, which is where we get the knockdown of the adult mosquitoes and our no-see-ums, the ones that, you know, carry the vector diseases and become a nuisance for us and a pest.
What's the lifespan of a no-see-um versus a mosquito?
So the lifespan of a female mosquito could be from 30 to 60 days, depending on the species. The no-see-ums closer to around a month and a half to 2 months or so. Yeah, so more or less the same. But what we proposed here to the public is to tackle these life stages of the mosquito and the no-see-um. The no-see-um takes a very similar life cycle to the mosquito, where it's egg, larva, pupa, adult. And in the proposal here, we have two opportunities to attack the mosquito in the larva stage with the Natural G30, which could be applied to those detention areas. I think it's about 3 acres here of public property. And then within the catch basins as well, using our Natural XRT product. And that will service up to around 275 catch basins. And that has a residual of around 180-day control. We could offer to do that twice a year.
Steve, can you all hear in the back? You're okay? Good.
And I know there was concern from the citizens that a lot of the town borders into the mangroves, and the way I understand your service, guys with backpacks are gonna actually attack that perimeter and make a barrier, if you will, to kill the larvae of both species?
Correct, yeah, we use a barrier application to where we want to get those no-see-ums and mosquitoes that are harboring in those areas, knock them down. There are certain label requirements to where you can't spray directly into a body of water per label. So in some cases where if it's mangroves right up against a water line, you won't be able to make the application per label. However, there are other applications we can make around the property to where we could provide relief to the residents.
Is that down around the Corinne Drive, the park that goes back down into through the mangroves?
That could be one of the areas.
Sounds like
yeah.
the north side of Harbor.
And that's for the barrier application. So with some of our G30 applications where some of these detention ponds are, again, proposed in the public areas where the 3-acre properties are, our Natural G30 product in there gets up to 30-day control to tackle the mosquito in the larva stage.
So they get once a month?
Yeah, we can provide that once a month, yes.
And they come 12 times a year.
And you changed the ingredients or the formula for the truck that sprays now too, isn't it? That's different under this proposal. That'll be different than what you did before?
Yes, we've worked with Jamie on about 2 different products that we proposed to the town. One being Maris 3.0, which is, it fits with our Earthright program, and it was one we wanted to at least get in front of the board here, or the commissioners, I'm sorry, because we see where the town of Ocean Ridge is going to be more eco-friendly and have more of a stewardship mindset. So the Maris is a product that has naturally derived pyrethrin, so it's actually botanical based. That's one of the options we proposed, and then the other one is Duet, which is what we used in 2018. In 2017, we switched from Biomist to Duet, so this current one in front of you would be the same adulticide product that we used at the ULV truck from last year, which was the Duet.
And the truck goes by how many times a month? So it's going by once?
We did 26 times last year. I believe it is proposed at
26.
26
Yeah,
again this
26.
year.
Okay.
Yes.
And is there any reduction in effectiveness between 2018 and the proposal for 2019?
When you say reduction, do you mean
In the
service?
chemicals or the natural chemicals you're using, or the improvements in the ingredients?
No, if anything, I think we're adding with the catch basin treatments.
And if I can just jump in there, the reason we're adding so many layers of service here is we've historically in the old contract, about, I'm just going to round numbers, 7/8 of the contract was being applied to private property where the area and distance and perimeter on the public spaces was a small portion of the overall program. So this has been ramped up significantly on the public side to try to provide that spillover protection, if you will, to address the problem.
Steve, how many times per month will homeowners receive treatment if they opt-in for the individual program?
So we've been working with Jamie on that. We have a few different scheduled treatments set forth, and then we have opt-in dates and opt-out dates as well. There would be a specific lock-in, but Jamie and I could
Yeah,
discuss that
if,
further.
the way it's currently configured, there's a 36 frequency per year, but what we're referencing here is we tried to look at it, what happens if somebody comes in mid-year and says, I want to sign up now, and we didn't want to have daily sign-ups, if you will, so we've tried to configure a quarterly program that we would let people opt in every quarter. So if they only opt in halfway into the year, then they would only get half of those treatments, obviously,
Right.
than the full
But
year.
still, we're talking about if you're in the program, is it 2 times a month or 3 times a month in general,
We're looking at about bi-weekly.
bi-weekly?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
it'd
it
be
said
like
3 times per
26.
month here.
Yeah, just
Three-
on the current proposal,
Current,
36 times, so.
And that would be for the public area, yes.
Now,
Go ahead.
if 7/8 was the private before, and now you're just doing the public, that's 1/8, but if you multiplied 47 grand by 8, we'd get like into the $300,000 range, and we're nowhere, we never spent that kind of money for the year. So are we doing so much more on this 1/8 of the property that it kind of balances that out to that kind of a degree?
We've actually increased the public property footprint to treat. We didn't
Oh, I see.
treat
So you
as
didn't do
much
the
as
whole-
we used to. We used to do the detention area and a couple
The
of other
1/8
areas.
is a bad figure.
Yeah, that was the early numbers when we first started talking with Commissioner DeHassett about the proportions between public and private. Depending on how you do those metrics, whether it's linear or area or volume or what have you, the numbers are all different. So on a linear model or an area model, it looked like 1/8 was public and the rest was private, just on pure acreage. But that doesn't represent the amount of chemicals and the metrics that they use to actually put that out there. It's the way it was configured based on opt-ins by private properties, which were scattered all over town.
Okay.
And we have increased our ELV treatment and route mileage from last year as well to get more ground covered in the public area.
Now, when you did this budget, am I okay?
Yeah.
When you did this budget, did you come up with a number that you think, okay, 50% of the people are going to opt in, or is there any kind of a segment there that you decided on?
As a team, we looked at that, and if we are out here more so, we could probably work on working with the residents, but what we have proposed here is the cost of the service we proposed here today outside of what we anticipate or could gather from residential service as well.
So you're saying if more people opt in, you'll knock the price down from, what was it, 465 to, or 445, was it? 465 to lesser if you, or maybe the following year type of thing, you can revisit
I
it?
would imagine they would revisit it each year
Yes.
because it's a contractual arrangement once it starts up.
Okay.
I would also imagine that the town's price would go down also. I'll withhold some of my comments until after.
And it's my understanding that you will set up a bill pay individual with the residents that choose to opt into this program on the individual homes, that your firm will bill those homes directly, and it won't involve the town at all. That's my understanding. I just want to make sure that the
I'll
residents
just help you there.
understand
We're
this.
working with them to set up the logistics of that program, but that is the intent.
But the desired result is
Yes.
exactly
Yeah.
what you're describing.
Yeah.
Yes.
The fine details.
It would
of how that-
it would be handled much like you handle your lawn service or your pool service or whatnot. They would bill you whatever, quarterly, monthly, however it is, and you would deal with these folks directly.
So in other words, if a private resident who's paid for the service has a mosquito problem, they don't call Jamie, they call you.
Yeah, Jamie and I are working on that, to
Okay.
streamline that system.
Okay, any other discussion?
Likewise, if they are a little delinquent in their bills, you get to deal with the
Yeah.
delinquency.
I like it. Yeah.
Welcome to billing and collection.
Yes.
Okay, on to iguanas. We'll do iguanas, then we'll come back to public comment.
I will say one thing, and Steve's favor. I had a problem with my yard, and I wasn't sure whether or not it was the new chemicals that they had started applying on the truck. And I called, and he came out, and we evaluated the yard, and we spent some time. And I was very satisfied with the service that you gave me, and I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Jamie?
Okay, Thomas, you want to come up and make a quick introduction about iguana controls and services?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity to explain further in detail the program.
I missed your
Anybody hear
name.
me? I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
And I missed your name, I'm sorry.
Tom
Name and
Portualo.
address.
Tom.
Just need your name and address for the record.
Tom Portualo, 10876 Northwest 66 Court, Parkland, Florida, 33076.
Good. You're on.
All right, just briefly, the 30-second resume is we're the largest company in South Florida dealing with solely the iguana for 10 years now. We operate literally in Key West. We have an office on Fleming Street, throughout Monroe County, like Truman Annex, the largest HOA in Key West, throughout Miami-Dade, of course Broward County, and into West Palm as well, as far as north as Lake Worth, West Palm Beach. The program that you have in front of you is very similar to the programs that we use in the HOA programs. And what that means is that typically the organization, of course, doesn't want to financially support something that may be considered an individual homeowner's concern, but they do want to do some kind of contribution to the solution. So they offer, and an HOA, or in cities like this, I also do Golden Beach in Miami, Key Biscayne, Marco Island. So usually it's to spend the tax dollar as wisely as they can. They bring in my firm where we will go to the common, or in this case, public areas. We service those areas, and then it allows us to offer a substantial discount to the homeowners for those that want to participate and bring us onto their property. Generically, it's a program where we're on the properties twice a week as a minimum throughout the year. More if we have to, meaning that if we're servicing a particular homeowner and the home across the canal is knocked down and all of a sudden we get a phone call that the population has increased, then of course the trappers will come out more frequently during the coming weeks to bring it back under control. But generically, it's a minimum of twice every week throughout the year. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yes. What's kind of the success rate? You know, you're not going to eliminate iguanas, we all know that, but do
No.
we see like only about 20% of them?
Usually, depending upon the property size, I can take down most large, when we do the institutional type service, we can take them about 10%. I may not be as successful in this size of a property because we are working with a certain budget. Like anything else, the more money you throw at it, of course, you solve it. But typically, I take most of our commercial entities down to about 10%.
So a 90% reduction. just
Yeah,
so I-
yeah, usually I get about on that. You know, I'm not committing that here because I don't know about the property, and we have to get a good look at where the problems are.
Yeah.
We'll focus on the public areas and do our servicing there.
Tom, have you
Yes.
sat down with Jamie and already identified where the public areas, and is it 5 different public areas? Is it 10? I mean, I think that for the neighbors, particularly the ones that are inundated on the north end, they would like to know exactly where it is so they can kind of watch your success rate also.
So properties are so unique, you know, some properties we can go to in a small area where one side there aren't many iguanas, another side they're just inundated.
No, I'm just asking for a map that you and Jamie work on a map where
Oh, yeah,
it is for, not for the private, for the public
Sure.
areas. I think that would be helpful for us to know.
I'm coming to that. So depending upon that idiosyncrasy of how these iguanas, like any other animal, will migrate to a particular area for no other reason, that's where they've gone. So we have stipulated and laid down specific park areas. There were some areas, some roundabout areas, as I recall. Some of the property we looked at are state-owned, like the mangroves, I believe. So there's a water drainage, I forget the name that you called it. There was a...
The detention area.
detention area. We did go through some of the details as far as specifically what areas we would service throughout that year, yes.
Okay, well, Jamie, I'd like to see a map of those.
We've also talked about zoning the entire town so that Iguana Control can move their people systematically through these areas and then circle back.
Well, we had, to correct that, we had several proposals, several plans. In Golden Beach, for example, we just do the entire town, all residents. In that particular case, which is what we had first discussed, we divide the city into sections. In a case like this where the town says to us, no, do the public areas only, we would hit those public areas twice every week throughout the year. We don't have to divide the territory into sections.
That was the more expensive plan.
That was the more expensive plan, yes, of course.
Okay.
So I have a question on the brain power of iguanas.
Yes.
If a household decides that they're going to hire your services, and you guys are there twice a week with mechanical equipment, let's call it.
Sure.
Do the iguanas start like a cat or dog, move to the next property? I'm serious.
No, it's true. They learn like any other animal does. When I go to a property and a homeowner says, my neighbor 2 doors down feeds them, when he comes out, they run toward him. They identify fear or something that's
I bring this up because if it's particularly in the north end, if somebody's going to hire, perhaps you want to talk to your neighbors and get like a stretch of
Sure.
homes involved.
Basically, what I answer that question, because normally the next question is, well, if I do this and my neighbor does not, what good is it? So it's just like ants, rats, and roaches, pests. Having one pest a month is part of nature. Having 4 or 5 a day, you do something, regardless of what your neighbor does. So if you have 4 or 5 rats or what have you, you bring in traps, poison. This is the same concept, meaning that it must be ongoing, it must be regular, and focus on a particular property so that you remove the ones that nest on that particular residential property, and then continue getting the ones that keep coming on, like ants, rats, and roaches.
So this is pretty simple. The 30-day walkout applies to the homeowners as well.
No, that's a different program because they're not paying on a month-by-month basis.
Well, I thought I saw there was $79 per month was an option.
He mathematically divided out what it comes out to be on a
Okay,
month-to-month
gotcha.
basis. Yeah.
So you're going to charge an annual.
I charge an annual fee. We come out every week several times. The municipalities, when it gets to a higher expense to the organization, then I allow the opt-out, the 30-day opt-out.
So I'm a little confused from what I read in the contract. We're committed to $1,600 a month with a 30-day walkaway.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the homeowner isn't.
Correct.
Okay.
What does the trapping entail? How do you trap them?
One of my men stands in a big iguana suit right by the trap. No, they're herbivores, and there's a litany, a list of different items people will use. But anything from fruit like a banana to lettuce or what have you is put into the bait, into the trap. The aggressive methods are combined with trapping. If you rely solely on trapping, now this is 10 years experience up and down the county in 5 counties. If you rely solely on trapping, you will never get ahead of the curve. The problem is that you have to use aggressive methods, and that's where the rub is, because some people, of course, are concerned about how animals are treated. FWC, Florida Wildlife Commission, every state has a wildlife commission. They call it something different, but it is a wildlife commission. And they are charged with policing how we raise, nurture, sell, euthanize all animals. Cattle, dogs, cats. Iguana is labeled a pest. Once they give it that label, it means you cannot relocate the animal unless you have the target property where you're taking the animal, the homeowner's permission. So unless someone says, sure, bring them all here, you cannot relocate an iguana.
Tell me if that happens on Sable Island.
Yeah.
Please.
I was going to designate it.
So
the Iguana Rescue Center that opened next to you?
Yeah.
So there's a very, very short list on how you can handle this particular issue. They specifically list, they have removed items like freezing and so on. You can no longer freeze iguanas. You can use controlled substances, but you need a specific license to purchase it, to store it, and to administer it, a vet, basically. And that, of course, takes the cost too high. You can use what they call these high-power pellet pistols, but you are required to do what's called a one-shot, one-kill. You cannot move the animal or what. You just have to be able to target on and make it a quick shot. So those are we do noosing, we do netting as well. These are methods that you have to combine with the trapping to make it an effective program. Without the aggressive methods, keep the money and build an iguana farm instead, go into the iguana business. So that's part of it, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, Tracy, could you do us a favor maybe and turn the air a little colder? I don't know if I'm the only one that's hot. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, let's open this up to public comment. Let's start with no-see-ums.
Are they going to hang around?
Yeah, definitely. I should say no-see-ums / mosquitoes.
Terry Brown, Harbor Drive South. I'm hearing this public area, public property, but we're not talking about going into the county natural area and spraying, or the county parks and spraying, or capturing. Am I right? That's correct.
Let's call
the
it
county,
town public.
Okay, that's what the distinction needs to be. Because I've seen these fellows with a backpack. They don't wear a mask, so I don't know what kind of hourly wage they're paying them. They don't have protection, and they turn over a lot. But they go to the back of the houses and they actually stand and spray into the natural area. Now that's prohibited. First of all, it's wet, and it's a county public park area. And when they walk down Corinne Street, they're not allowed to spray on either side. Part of that property is public and part of it's private. So it's a concern because I'm looking forward to saving the one last spot where mosquitoes can go and birds can come and feed, because that's the purpose of natural area, wildlife preservation. So we need to be careful about this enthusiasm for soaking us in pesticides, because the insects are disappearing. Thank you.
Yes, Zoanne.
Good evening, Zoanne Hennigan, 91 Island Drive South. I actually just have a question, and this is probably to Jamie. I'd like to know what the communication plan is to the residents. First of all, to tell them that they're no longer getting the town-sponsored spraying, and then to offer them this service.
The simplest answer is we've been communicating this for several months through these meetings and through the minutes and through the newsletters of the town. Currently, we are without contract with this program, which means nobody is receiving service. And as soon as we get the contract configured and approved by the town commission, we will put out a communication to all the residents what their options are.
So, I mean, I attend meetings. I get the newsletter. I mean, not everybody attends meetings, not everybody gets the newsletter. So that's my concern, is a lot of people that, I mean, I don't know how many get the spraying, but I'm wondering, for those people that don't attend meetings, there's not a lot of people that attend meetings. You do have a limited number of people that get the newsletter, how they really, if they don't have those vehicles, how they find out. I mean, can we proactively, you have the list of people that get the spraying, can we proactively send them a note, put a note in their mailbox or whatever to tell them?
We can mail them. We have a list of the people that were previously opted into the private property spray program, and they can all be contacted to alert them that there is a private opt-in ability for receiving those services. But the town no longer provides those.
So how many complaints have you got from residents that were previously getting the mosquito no-see-um spray, that once it's stopped, it's been stopped for what, 2 or 3 months now? So
The last treatment cycle, I believe, was in November.
So has any of the residents called and said what happened?
In about 6 months, I've received 2 calls. One was concern for not doing the private property spraying and maybe an uptick in no-see-ums and mosquitoes. The other call I received was concern about a particular resident that was out jogging or whatever and came home at the time they were fogging, which is usually done either in the dawn or the dusk because of the nature of the service. Those are the only two calls that I've gotten.
But I think this time of year, it's not when you would
Well,
notice
that's-
it as much. I mean,
Yeah, the question, says is, so how much, what good is it doing if they don't realize that it's not being done?
We'll certainly find out in the
Yeah,
coming months.
Exactly.
you would in the summer for sure, but, November, December, a lot of people aren't here.
Just a question.
Thanks,
Well,
Owen.
and to your point, as soon as we can get the program nailed down, we plan to communicate that to our residents
good
as to
idea.
what their options are.
Any more comment on mosquitoes, no-see-ums? Okay, let's move to iguanas. You can't believe I just said that.
Cindy Martell, 46 Harbor Drive South. I just have a question. I'm puzzled, how are they going to get rid of them? How are they going to, is it poison or is it traps?
Perhaps we could bring Tom back up to,
Just because I'm concerned, we have a lot of dogs, there's a lot of animals.
my understanding
It's gonna
is
be
no
other-
poison, no other animals will be involved, and
Okay.
it's not like leaving rat food.
I mean, I'm on the water too, I don't
Yeah.
notice many, but I notice more rats, but.
So, Tom, would you mind coming up again and just allaying people's concern about the use of poison in their pets?
There is no use of any chemical of any kind or poison of any kind. It's simply a metal trap, about 3 feet long, a foot high, a foot wide. It's baited. When the men come to the property, they're of course going to be checking the traps and walking through the property, actually looking, searching for the iguanas to remove them. A quick note about that.
So there's nothing that's going to be done that's going to hurt a child or a pet?
Absolutely not. Yeah. If
Or a
Unless you have a banana-loving cat
Yeah.
that likes to wander.
a vegetarian. Thank you, Tom. Anybody on public? Okay, let's move to commission. You got one more. Whoop, sorry. Peter?
Commissioners, thank you. I hate to think like a lawyer, but I'm back there listening to this.
Name and address.
Please. Peter Burling, 7 Osprey Drive. First question for all of you, would it be helpful if there were maps which showed specifically where mosquitoes and other applications are going to take place, so everybody in town could see it? Question?
I thought that's what Christine was asking for. So I think those two companies will provide, or Jamie actually. we're gonna
We
put
already
you in
have the
charge.
maps of the proposed routes, yes.
Okay, and the maps will be made available to
Absolutely.
citizens and others?
Maybe we should actually put a little box on the front of the website, which, yeah, click and it'll show you the maps.
With regard to trapping, as you know, I come from New Hampshire, trapping goes on all the time. The question I'd like to hear, maybe directed to the contractor, is what's the incidence of other things showing up in the traps? And what is the policy of the company? I mean, I have no idea, but I would imagine you could find serpents or pets or all kinds of interesting things. Raccoons, what do you do with them?
Tom? Yeah, actually, that's not a bad idea.
So, in 10 years, I have yet to trap a dog any size at all. Sometimes a cat, an occasional bird. Most common, obviously, would be raccoons or possums. In that case, we are allowed to release them. I do not have my men transport them someplace else or what have you to release those animals. Raccoons are no longer considered the pests that they were at one time, so you are allowed to, and same thing with the possum, so you are allowed just to open the trap and let them go. Otherwise, no other animal is harmed.
So when you say that you've caught one bird, one cat in 10 years.
No, I mean, not one, I've caught a few birds.
Very
yeah.
few. I think what people's concern is, would that apply to the iguana eradication on the public lands or just on the private homeowner's land? Because then the private homeowner can make a decision. Because the animals can wander, but I would say generally animals are staying within their yard in Ocean Ridge.
Yeah.
They have to, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that familiar with raccoons, but I imagine they're territorial. The iguanas I'm very familiar with. They are territorial, so if there's a resident or home is where they tend to stay, they will come back to that same place, that same tree, that hole, that burrow, whatever it is. on a regular basis. They have the same pattern, they're habitual, and given those two characteristics, being territorial and habitual, that's why my business exists. Without that, it'd be difficult to narrow it down, but otherwise, no other animals harmed in the trap. The traps are a holding trap. If an animal did get into it, it's a plate that trips the door, and it falls, and then
Like a
this holds the
heart.
animal. And they have a heart, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That would be your sanctuary.
All right, commission discussion?
All right, I'll kick off commission discussion. Thank you both gentlemen for coming. We appreciate it. And thank you, staff. This has been a 6-month back and forth. Some ridiculous conversations and some interesting conversations. My overall arching concern is that in December, Jamie, you brought forth in your report kind of a synopsis as to where we were and a picture of what we were doing. And at that time that you said that the Clark contract was at $32,000. We're now at $47,000, which is, a $13,000 delta. That coupled with what I just heard about this, 7/8 being private, so that meant before, if you kind of use that metric, only $8,500 of a $6,800,000 contract was then being used for the public. So we've gone from roughly an $8,500 fee for public land to $48,000, or $47,000, pardon me. My concern is not the level of service, which may well be necessary. My concern is that with an overall budget of only $60,000 to handle both of these issues, if you give 80% of the entire budget to one issue, it doesn't leave much wiggle room for our pilot program of the iguanas to be increased or changed or modified in any way. So I think that's my overarching concern here, and I just want to understand, how we went from 32 to 47 in less than 30 days, and
If I can just address that one, because that's kind of a sticking point here. That
It is.
quote of 32,000 was on the August 30th document, and that's when the public side process was still paired with a $54,000 private side process, under the umbrella of the town managing and doing the whole thing. When we told Clark that we were no longer going to administer the private side, the numbers changed, and I asked Clark to ramp up the amount of services to the public side to offset for the fact that both the company and the town felt that many of the private side individuals would no longer take advantage of the services once they had to do it themselves. And so in ramping up, which is the November 30th version, which was the $47,000 price tag, I believe that's the one you have in your package.
Yes.
Was reflective of the change of requests for the kinds of services, the frequency of the services, and how much of the town we would cover under doing just a public side program, and then anybody private side would be a fixed amount that they would opt into. So essentially what was included in the metrics of the overarching program changed significantly from August to November, and that's why the big shift in cost.
Okay, but I am reading out of your December 3rd report at commission level. We're operating the new fiscal year under the modified mosquito and no-see-um control extension about $34,000 annually. We're also prepared to engage iguana control services at a projected annualized cost of $30,000 attached. So now we've got $19,000 for a pilot program with iguanas that may or may not need to be increased or decreased, and we've got from 34 now to 47. And I'm just, having put this amount of time and research and back and forth, I'm very uncomfortable giving 80% of the entire budget under contract to one service without knowing if the other services, we may end up canceling the whole iguana thing completely. Who knows? But, we also may need to increase it. So, but there's absolutely zero wiggle room to do that if, under this scenario.
Jamie, just to clarify, when I spoke with you earlier, last week. I thought the impact to the fiscal 2019 is 35,000. So it's
Under-
at 35,000.
That was,
So it's-
No, we're signing a contract for an annual.
I understand that.
Yes.
But the actual impact to next year's budget is 35. See, the
Yes,
19.
that's a calculation that's reflected in your cover memo, the portion of that cost that would still apply to this fiscal year. Part of the issue, if you recall, is we spent roughly 68,000 in FY18 on that one service alone. And then when this commission combined iguana control, pest control, and mosquito no-see-em, excuse me, something caught my throat. You, in the budgetary process, also reduced the total expenditure for all services to 60,000. So this is a math equation. It's a giant jigsaw puzzle. We're just trying to make all the parts and pieces and services fit in the budgeted amount for the fiscal year. As to the point of whether we ramp up or discontinue, say, iguana trapping, this is a pilot program that is being done in very few places, and we don't know the experience of whether we'll want more of it or less of it or whatever. So we picked this company, one, because they've been in the business a very long time, because they had a very professional, systematic way to charge us for it and a way for us to get out of it if it's not working for us. The earlier figures, when iguana control, for example, was much higher, was because, and Tom alluded to this, we talked about a zoned inclusive program that included going into private areas as well, which would cycle people through. That was the $30,000 program that you mentioned from earlier. The 16 was the other option he had given us earlier for the one you have before you, and that fit our overarching objectives here better to go with that as a pilot program at this time.
And if I could add my thoughts, mosquitoes and no-see-em are a townwide problem that affects every single resident in town. The iguanas affect a limited number of residents just due to geography. Number one. Number two, if you look at the amount of land mass that we're trying to deal with, the mosquito no-see-em land mass is much larger than the iguana land mass. And then we have gone to these outside experts to come to us with their professional opinions of how much money we need to spend, and this is their professional opinion. It's a pilot program on the iguanas, but the gentleman says that $19,500 is the way to go in 2019.
I'm not gonna, healthy debate, I believe, is what governance is about, so I'm not going to, I cannot agree that no-see-ems is a townwide problem, because I've lived on Sable for close to a dozen years and never had one no-see-em. And if I went back and looked at some of the private homes, there was only 2 homes on it, and they opted in because they said, well, why not? I said, well, do you have the no-see-em problem? No, but, why not?
Are you telling me no one on Sable Island has mosquitoes? Come on.
I'm telling you, one is not an isolated problem and the other one is a townwide problem. I think that is
No, I didn't say isolated, geographically restricted, let's call it. Iguana's like water.
You've seen an iguana in your pool,
Yeah, one in 29 years.
okay?
And you probably put it there from Sable.
My evil ways. Regardless, I can't in good consciousness turn over 80% of an entire budget to one side of the equation. And I don't think that's fair, I don't think it's equitable, I don't think it was the intention in which we started with, and it gives us absolutely zero wiggle room to do anything on the iguana side should we need to. And you can't look at it as a $35,000 expenditure just because it's in this budget year. You're being asked as a commissioner to sign an annual contract for $47,000.
Understood. Any other comments?
Well, the only other comment I have is last year we had 100% over to the mosquitoes and no-see-ems, and this year we're going to put 20,000. So that's a infinite number of an increase on the iguana side, and it is a test case. So we may want to shift it next year, but I think this year we should at least see what's going on, whether it's going to be successful or not.
Mm-hmm. And we'll be starting the budget year here in a very few months.
Oh, good.
Start budgeting again.
Okay, so do I hear a motion on agenda item number 5?
Can I make one more comment? Can we have an assurance that, because I've heard a little wishy-washy back and forth, that Clark will handle the private administration of this?
That's been the consensus and direction of
Okay.
this commission,
Can
so
we get
that's
that
the way it'll
I
be
want to make
configured.
sure that that's part of what we're agreeing to.
And Clark is confirming that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's where the 465 in the contract is probably going to go up to, 465 is like $38 a month if you want an individual homeowner. If it goes up so that they can cover their administrative cost for billing and collection, and the town is out of it totally. So you're talking maybe still less than $50 a month, maybe somewhere around 48. I'm not sure how much of the increase above the 465 will be, but the town and the town administration will have nothing to do with the individual billing or collection.
Okay, so do I hear a motion on agenda item number 5, pest control contract?
I move that we approve item number 5 on pest control as laid out in the contracts with the caveat that the NOCM contract by Clark has more specific language in it as to individual billing.
Will that mess up this motion, Brian?
No, it won't. When you say that you want the proposal from Clark to have more information regarding individual billing, and are you talking about more specifics on the actual cost?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I guess if the gentleman from Clark, is he okay with that proposal?
Yes, to provide a revised proposal,
That includes administrative fees.
including administrative fees for the private homeowners.
Correct.
And that lists the actual cost of what you'll be charging?
And we
Okay.
also need to know whether it's going to be on a monthly basis, billing, or an annual, or a semi-annual, quarterly, however they're going to do that.
And we can put that in the proposal.
So can you give us a little help on the motion? Can Don just make the motion he just did?
Okay, so I imagine Commissioner Magruder's motion was to approve the 2 contracts that were drafted by the town attorney for no-see-ums with Clark and for iguana pest control with Blue Iguana, subject to that the Blue Iguana will include the proposal as attached. The proposal from Clark will include the amendment as directed by Commissioner Magruder.
If you say
Is that
so-
the
so
motion?
moved. So moved.
I'll take it. So moved. I can't.
Do we hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay?
Nay.
Now,
So
if I can, let me point out, and I probably should have pointed this out before, the agreement with Clark is based on the best interest of the town, because we did not go out to bid for this agreement. And under our town purchasing policy, because it exceeds the $25,000, we have to use a best interest acquisition, which then requires a 4/5 majority vote to approve that agreement. So I probably should have had you split them up.
Can we split it up now?
Well, if we can we have I guess someone who voted in the affirmative, can you, since this motion didn't pass, can you?
It did pass.
Well, no, it did.
Supermajority.
That's right, it would have to, but it was 3-2, so it would take a supermajority to do that. So therefore, we'll need another motion on, can we have another motion, and I would assume, can we split it up for Clark and for Iguana, or at least that's what I would suggest. And then I just want to let you all know that it will take a supermajority on the Clark agreement to pass that. The Iguana agreement could be passed by a 3-2 vote.
Okay, so why don't we start with the iguana agreement, because that's easy.
All right, I'll move to have the iguana agreement approved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
I oppose it, and if you'd like to know why, I'll tell you. There's nothing in the contract that says that the town takes precedent over private residences. if there are 30 or 40 private residences that decide on negotiating a contract with the iguana pest people, and they come to town, which areas take precedent in terms of their monitoring the iguana?
It's a very good point, Bob. I understand what you're saying, but remember, we have a 30-day walk away. The town can walk away in 30 days.
You could amend the motion.
I'd like to amend the motion
To,
that the monitoring of iguanas for the town
I
takes
think you have,
precedent. The monitoring
procedurally,
and
you have to
trapping.
do this a little differently.
are we getting into the weeds here?
Well, no, if we can, I guess, what would you like to see as far as the as far as new language?
I would like to see the service to the town take precedent over the individual services when they come to Ocean Ridge. Okay, if there are 40 people that want service and they have 3 people coming to town, who gets the service first? Is it the individual residences or the town? Since we brought the contract to town, I think we have the right for first service.
Okay, so you would like to see an amendment to the agreement to provide that during the biweekly visits, or I guess the 2 visits per week that they come, that they will address the town public areas first before they address private areas.
Correct.
Now, we may want to ask the gentleman from Iguana Pest Control to come up here, because my understanding was that they might try to address the areas as, let's say, if they start up at the north end of town, I would assume they would address the public and then the private as they're coming south, but I don't know. And I guess if I could ask the gentleman to come up to see if that would be acceptable, where when your workers come to town, if they can address the town public areas as far as those traps first before you address private properties.
I can, but the timing really is of less importance. If I have 3 men that are servicing the town and 40 homeowners, and if there's an issue in scheduling, then I add more men to the program. Bottom line, it's several visits every week to every property. So the public properties will be visited several times, minimum twice every week, period. If one person, residential person, signs on, that property will be visited minimum twice every week. If 50, they will all be. So the idea of the importance to me is a matter of just having the manpower there to address the issue or anything else, whether I have 1 man or 3 men or 10 men here. I'm contractually based to make sure I visit every property minimum twice every week, period. Public or individual.
So what I'm hearing is it's equal at the least.
It's equal, yeah, exactly.
Is that satisfying?
I'll accept that.
So do we need to make another motion, or are you withdrawing?
I'll withdraw my.
Okay. Thank you again, Tom. Okay, so that motion passed 4-1.
Well, I guess, let me see, Tracy, is that correct on that motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
4-1, okay.
Okay, now if somebody would
That
like
was
to
iguana.
make a motion, that was iguana, correct. Make a motion on mosquito no-see-em pest control.
We tried, yeah.
Look at you.
Okay. I move that we approve the Clark contract, but how did you want to say that? You wanted with the proposed amendments to the contract that would state what the monthly homeowner fee would be and the schedule of those payments to be made.
Yes, that the proposal will be amended to specifically state what the private pay would be and the frequency, whether they would accept quarterly, monthly, or semi-annually. Now, do you have a preference on what you would prefer? Because they might come back and say, well, it'll be a monthly fee, a quarterly fee, a semi-annual, or an annual fee.
I don't care.
I thought the intent for modification was that, to make sure that Clark administers the private section all by themselves, contacts them, takes calls from them, collects their own fees from them, collects their own indemnification from them, that the town is completely out of that picture. That was more to my intent.
they've also provided us with a letter proposing the quarterly enrollment plan that I spoke of earlier, where people would sign up on a quarterly basis.
I don't care if the owner pays quarterly or monthly or weekly or daily. I think we're
That's
getting kind of.
between them and
Right.
the resident.
I mean, the
So,
only concern about.
Can we just redo the motion that we did originally? Because that was pretty comprehensive.
Well, it was, but the only thing that I do want to point out to you is by us putting it, by them putting in the proposal that this is what they will charge the annual fee, there could be some onus on the town to say, well, what if the property owner comes to the town and says, well, wait a minute, they charge me more than what they were supposed to charge me, or they charge me more than what the proposal said that they were supposed to charge me.
Isn't that simply just putting $465 plus administrative fees in the contract?
That we can certainly do that.
Right, so maybe that's the motion.
So the motion is to approve the agreement with Clark and amend the proposal to include their private pay, or the amount of charges that they would charge a private property owner.
Above and beyond 465.
Well, just in total, including all of the other things.
Okay, so moved, Don?
And let's try that.
We'll try it again. And do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all,
Can we have discussion since we've got an active motion on the table? I would be happy to approve as it was if it was back to the $32,000 level. I just cannot justify a $47,000 expenditure against it, so I will not be voting in the positive for it.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Newsflash.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed by saying nay.
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 So it's 3-2, so we have a
It
problem.
fails,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
May I tell you why I voted against it?
Mhm.
The contract calls for a 5% increase. Is that correct?
No.
At the end of the term?
Possibly, but no. Right now, the proposed contract calls for whether or not both parties would have to agree on a renewal. And so it's really up to both parties on what we would want to do if we want to agree to any renewal.
The document that I was given, is it modified?
It is modified by the new contract that's attached.
Does Bob, Commissioner have this? Yeah. Does that change?
That changes because I was very much
Okay, can
against a 5%
Very good.
increase at the end of the second year.
Understand. So, town attorney?
I will
Okay.
withdraw my name.
Well, no, can we have, since that motion failed?
Reconsider the motion.
Okay, yes, does someone want to move to reconsider that motion? Some, one of,
That's all you have to
Yeah, I'll
say.
make a.
make a motion for reconsideration. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so
Okay.
now we are reconsidering that motion. Now you may want to call the roll.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
So the motion carries 4-1 and meets the town attorney's requirement.
What is that contractual amount?
The contractual amount is the
No,
$47,000.
that would require supermajority.
Anything, because it's best interest acquisition, anything above 25,000 would require that, yes.
Okay, so we're moving on to agenda item number 6, resolution number 2019-01. There was discussion about having some rules of engagement, if you will, between the commissioners, the public and the commission and the public. So the staff got together and has put together rules of order and procedure, and Town Manager Titcomb will advise us on this.
This is, I'll just tee it off for you guys. This is really a discussion amongst yourselves. These are assembled rules from a number of best practices of various size communities that just talk about procedural and civility issues as to running the business of the commission. The document before you is pretty self-explanatory. There's different areas that talk about how meetings are held, presentations, decorum and order, rules of debate, and so on and so forth. And I would just remind you that whatever you adopt is a set of rules that you would be applying to yourself to follow as a guideline.
But there is a
Of course,
rule in the rules that says we can change the rules anytime we want.
There are provisions in there to change specific rules, so it's not very restrictive, let's put it that way.
Okay, so let's open this to public comment. No public comment? Okay. Oh.
I have public comment. You're not taking any action, you're just going to discuss it. Terry Brown, Harbor Drive South. Yeah, I read through it. I don't have it committed to memory, but I didn't see a rule titled Terry Brown Rule.
We're going to sneak it in on second read.
I know you could change it, though.
Should be one.
But I just wanted to be sure that we're doing the same thing in terms of public comment, 3 minutes limit, and that's per agenda item. If there's another agenda item, that same person can come up and do 3
Right,
minutes.
And if you so choose to come up in the beginning of the meeting for public comment, you then can't come up during the agenda item public comment.
You can't.
Cannot.
So if you
Same
come
rules.
up during public comment for an item that's already on the agenda,
Correct.
but you could talk about something else.
Correct.
Okay. That's why I always come up
You
and
don't get
ask.
two bites at
I
the
always
same
come
time.
up and ask. I'm respectful in that way. But the other point I wanted to make is that you said that someone who came up with a presentation gets 15 minutes. Now, we've had situations where town residents have come in for presentations on
We're
something.
going to go through discussion on that.
Okay.
And I totally agree
So
with
what's
you.
the point in having public comment before you do
I
discussion?
know where you're heading.
Okay.
I agree with what
Yeah.
you're, yeah.
So that's something. The area that you have in there regarding the mayor, or the presiding officer, it says actually, that can do a motion and/or a second.
Good point.
So that's something that I think you need, I'm not sure why you'd want to do that. If you have 2 votes, you're not going to get the third if you can't move it to question. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a
Thank
valid
you.
point, very valid point. Any other public? Yep.
Zoanne Hennigan, 91 Island Drive South. Just as a general comment, I think this is really good to have these. I'm not going to nitpick every individual one. And I'm sure you guys have, can talk about it and over time add or change or delete. But having worked on the charter committee, it references this, just about every town references rules, and many towns have rules. We've never had documented rules, so I'm really thrilled that you guys are doing that, so thank you.
We haven't done it yet.
Well, you better.
So is the easiest way to do this that I'll read out the item number, and then if a commissioner has a change, and then we'll go through in that manner? Okay. All right, 3.1, a special meeting may be called by the mayor, town manager, or a majority of the town commission as necessary. The town clerk or designee shall prepare the agenda notices and package materials for the meetings.
I take back, why don't you just,
Does the public want to know what we're voting on, or what we're discussing?
It was in the packages.
Everybody got it?
Can you put it up on the screen?
The bottom line is on 3.1, the notification can't be less than 12 hours for a special meeting. Any discussion on 3.1? The second half of 3.1 is that the mayor, town manager, or majority of the commission members can call an immediate emergency
That's 3-2.
town commission meeting.
It's 3-2. So are you
3-2,
saying
yeah.
all 3? Like-
3-2, excuse me. I was just going to group 3 together. Okay. So I would suggest putting in the word immediate, because emergency town commission, or excuse me, something that says you can do this emergency meeting with less than 12-hour notice.
Necessitating immediate action and judgment.
Right. I don't know what the word is, Brian, if we just put immediate in there and take it out in the second time it's repeated? Or do you just want to flatly state that we can call an emergency town meeting with less than 12 hours notification?
Well, I think if we look at the end of it, such a notification shall be given as soon as practicable before commencement of the meeting and shall state the time, place, and subject of the meeting. So it's kind of open there regarding how much time you can actually give, because it probably depends on the emergency of the situation. And so I understand what you're...
3.1 and 3.2 conflict. That's what I'm trying to get rid of the conflict. So I'm trying to say that the emergency meeting doesn't have to abide by 3.1, which says you could have 12 hours. That's what I'm trying to do.
I think at the very end, we can say such notification shall be such notification shall be given as soon as practicable, which may be less than 12 hours.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Any other points on those? Rule 4, adjourned meeting. Anybody have any comments on that? Okay. Rule 5, presiding officer. The mayor shall preside at town commission's meeting and is the ceremonial head of the government, basically. Comments? 5.2, vice mayor shall act as mayor during the absence. Any comments on that? Okay, we're moving on to Rule 6, corporate seal. It stays in the custody of the town clerk. Rule 7, presentation and public comment. Maybe we should slow down on this one. Town commission's meetings are business meetings of the commission, and the right to limit discussions rests with the commission. And this is what Terry Brown was pointing out. 7.2, except as otherwise set forth in these rules, persons who make a presentation to the town commission must limit the duration of their presentation to 15 minutes. Exceptions may be granted. And I think what Terry was getting at is there's a slight confusion in these rules between presentation with a capital P, which is a pre-approved presentation that the resident or the entity comes to the town manager, says they have a presentation and is allowed to have 15 minutes, versus someone in the public coming up and doing a comment which could be construed as a presentation. The reason why I separate the capital P presentation from the small p presentation is because under the new rules, if you're a public commenter, you can't display any materials, information, graphics during public comment. When, if you remember, during the beginning of the iguana situation, the gentleman came up and had all these wonderful pictures of the iguanas invading his yard. So legally, I don't know if a cap P takes care of the problem, or...
Well, could we just say something like an approved, pre-scheduled presentation?
Sure. Okay.
Something like along the lines of if you're going to do a presentation that's going to take longer than 3 minutes and up to 15, maybe there would be some advance notice.
An agenda.
There you go. Yep. So is Tracy or Jamie keeping up with the fixes? Okay. 7.3 okay? 7.4? Right? Okay, 7.5, I have a problem with this. I have a problem with the word boisterous. If you look up boisterous, this is that no one can be boisterous. If you look up boisterous in the dictionary, it includes cheerful and some other non-threatening behaviors. So I, at the minimum, would strike the word boisterous. Perhaps somebody can come up with something else, if needed.
I think we can just strike that and defamatory, slanderous remarks. Yes.
Boisterous.
No happiness.
No happiness. Number 8.1, anybody got any problems with 8.1 or 8.2? Okay, 8.3, no member of the public shall during commission make or cause to be made any disruptive noise, etc. This is the problem, Brian, that I was, hang on, see where it says, or display any sign or graphic material of any kind, except in connection with a presentation made to the commission by a speaker at the podium. I think that's a different use of the word presentation in that rule than in the previous rule.
I mean, I think if we say no member of the public shall during a commission meeting make or cause to be made any disruptive noise or sound or
You can't limit the display of
Right.
signage.
No.
That's illegal.
So I think if we just meeting or cause to be made any disruptive noise, what if we say sound or action?
Okay.
And then of any kind in the commission chambers except in connection with it made to the commission by a speaker at the podium. So if we do that.
Okay, and remember, this is a discussion point of this, then it's going to be finalized for first read, then second read.
Well, no, there is no first or second reading. This is not an ordinance, it's just your rules.
So what do we do?
Well, I mean, tonight, if you are comfortable with staff making these changes, you can approve them tonight, or if you want us to bring them back and change.
Wait to see the final
Okay.
product, for sure.
Red line.
Okay.
Good.
8.4, any problems? 8.5 is excellent, by the way. I don't know who crafted this, Tracy, Jamie, the collaboration of the staff with Brian. I think it's really good. Can we keep it down, please? 8.6.
I don't think we should put if becomes necessary. Let's have the police chief be the sergeant at arms.
So you're just
you
suggesting
can-
strike if it becomes necessary,
Right.
and just start with the police chief?
Right.
How's that work? The police chief, or is it?
I think really the police chief is the sergeant at arms anyway, so, or the.
Or, so it should be the police chief or his designee?
Or designate.
Well, it's yes, the police chief or designee shall be cut, yes.
Right. We don't need his,
Strike
because
if
it's
it
obvious.
becomes necessary. Right.
Yes.
He may be a she.
Yeah. Good point. Okay, so we're all set on 8.6. Any other question, confusion on it? All right, Rule 9, 9.1, sequence of debate. And this goes to what Christine was saying during this meeting. Previously, what we've done is we've done some commission discussion during motions. Then before we voted, we go to the public discussion. So under the guidance of Tracy and Jamie, that slowly changed over the last few meetings. And what we do is we do public comment first, then we move to commission discussion, which hopefully allows the commissioners to absorb some thoughts from the public that the commissioners wouldn't have thought of. Then we vote. So, there's really no difference to, once the presiding officer closes public comment, once it's closed, it's closed. Do we currently really don't adhere to that, I mean, we are a little loose on that?
Which actually I think is kind of a good thing.
I know,
mean, you
that's what I'm
kind of
getting
want to be, if somebody comes up afterwards and go, oh, I forgot to say something, I think you still, and I think you still have the ability to do exactly what you've been doing. This is not going to curtail that.
So the presiding officer does have the ability to allow someone in the public that,
Hey, Brian, we should change it from he or she shall call for to may call for, because they may want to change for, they may want to change
Is
the,
that
or the
once
sequence, yeah. They
close the
may want to
public-
call for debate first before a motion.
That'd be the
So
Terry
instead of
Brown
shall,
rule,
say
right?
may.
Okay,
Yeah.
may.
We slipped you in, Terry, that's the Terry Brown rule. You weren't talking, you'd hear it.
TB 11.
9.TB11.
Okay.
Okay, 9.2, I had the same problem that's already been brought up. I think you need ors in the headline there. Presiding officer may move or second or debate, because it sounds like that the mayor could just move, second, debate, and be done with it.
But it wouldn't be
That's
legal.
It wouldn't
I
be
mean,
legal.
wouldn't
Yes,
be
it can't
legal if you did.
So I just suggest a couple ors in the headline, the rest of it's fine.
One of the questions I had was just in terms of timing of issues, and it doesn't necessarily apply to this commission, but I've seen it in other commission meetings that I attend in other towns. Usually the presiding officer is not the one that is allowed to make the first motion. And it is, I don't know if it's a courtesy issue, I don't know if it's because as they're running the meeting, under Robert's Rules of Order, it's gives them somewhat of a preferential treatment, because obviously they're already the ones talking about something and doing something, so I do, and in the past, we've sometimes passed the gavel. So
It
we've kind of
eliminates
been-
the step of passing the gavel.
Yeah,
That's basically
so, but I'm really comfortable with a second. I'm not so sure if there's a way to address the concern that I just brought up in terms of making a motion, because I'm not against the presiding officer making a motion either, but I do think in terms of sequencing, other commissioners should have the opportunity also. But I don't know how you, that's a tricky one.
I guess we could add some language on this one, that the presiding officer, we would keep well, actually, it's one sentence there, keep that, and then say something at the end of that. However, the presiding officer may only make the motion once he or she has called for a motion, and if no motion is made, then the presiding officer may make a motion, something like that, if that's what, because, to be honest, I see that as, that's what the mayors I see in most places do. You call for a motion. And that's common practice. So it's, if you all would want to put in that language, that after the mayor calls for the motion, and then if nobody makes a motion, then at that point in time, then the presiding officer can make a motion if he or she so desires.
You want me to read that back to you?
Well,
Try that.
However, the presiding officer may only make the motion once he or she has called for a motion and no other motion by other commissioners has been made.
is that,
We'll take another look at it next meeting.
okay?
Okay.
All right, so that's what we'll add, okay.
Okay, 9.3, anybody got any problems with 9.3? 9.4? 9.5? This I had a problem with, and I think it's just a wording problem. This says that any commissioner desiring to speak shall address the presiding officer, and upon recognition of the presiding officer, shall confine comments to the item under debate. I understand we're trying to keep things under control, but one of the beauties of this town commission is that one commissioner will bring in a thought up, and then the commissioner next to him doesn't go to me to get permission to talk to that commissioner. It's a little looser than that. So I don't like this at all.
I mean, we can remove it if you want. If you all want, it doesn't matter.
Like, for instance, tonight, we had one commissioner talking to the fellow commissioner to the benefit of everyone.
It goes back to debating the issue.
Yeah.
Between
So strike it.
commissioners.
Does anybody have any problem with striking it?
I don't know. I think debating between commissioners is a good thing.
Is a plus, correct. I think it's just the way it's worded. All right, so it's struck. 9.6, 9.7, 9.8.
All the things we've done so far tonight.
Okay. 9.9,
Yeah, this wording to me seemed confusing.
on 9.8 or 9.9?
9.9. It just seemed like you can do it anyway, so why put it in two to three different sentences?
Because it has to be done by the prevailing side.
Well, the first sentence, right, but then, okay. But then the nothing herein contained shall, by the next meeting, you can do it again. You know what I mean? You could remotion the whole thing again. So you're
Yes.
saying this whole paragraph just has to do with that same day, it has to be to the presiding,
Prevailing.
prevailing, I'm sorry, prevailing.
Like when we just did the 3-2 vote, the only person that could redo that would have been somebody on the 3 side.
Okay,
Re-
so that's what
revisit
this
the
whole
motion.
paragraph's about then, okay.
Yeah.
And there are some rules that allow motions to reconsideration to take place at a following meeting. And what what the proposal here is to restrict it to that same meeting, that the motion to reconsideration must be made at that same meeting. So that's just a clarification on that.
All right.
Okay. Okay, we're moving on to Rule 10, 10.1. Anybody getting problems with 10.1?
I have a question about 10.1, the last sentence, with our current town clerk excluded. I think the town clerk, if the town clerk votes yea or nay, that town clerk should document the reason for accepting or denying.
Yep. In other words, if, let's say, somebody applies for the Board of Adjustments, like they're going to for February, but they live in Hypolaxo Island, you refuse them because you document they live in Hypolaxo Island.
Right. It's says, and submit that information to the town
If
commission.
that's to avoid a possible lawsuit.
There.
Town clerk has full discretion.
Right? You think we're already covered?
Town
And
clerk should
submit that
document.
information to town.
It's really,
It's there.
it's already built in,
Last
the way,
sentence.
the way it's wordsmithed.
But, oh, it says town commission.
Submit that information to the town commission.
Okay. Does that cover it, Bob, actually? I missed the last phrase. They have, Tracy has to submit that information to us anyway, if she rejects somebody.
In the staff report. Yep.
So I think Tracy would just submit, like, 5 people applied, 2 of them were not residents of the town of Ocean Ridge and therefore should not be considered or something like that, but that is something that would be presented to you all.
Okay.
I had one addition to 10.1, and this has come up in the last couple of things we've had. I think as a general rule, I would like to see us adopt a policy of no off-the-floor nominations. 10.2 completely negates it, because it turns around and says we could do it, but I think as a standard, we should try to set a policy that we don't take off-the-floor negotiations, just because I don't think it's fair to the people who have gone through the correct procedures and policies to actually do stuff.
I would total disagreement on that. Because what if you have one candidate for the position?
That's covered in 10.2.
Oh, right, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. I
yeah.
thought you wanted to introduce language in 10.1 to override 10.2.
No, 10.2 overrides 10.1. But
Right.
I'm just saying if we're setting out rules, the rules are the standard of what we'd like to try to live by,
Mhm.
but if we can't, then 10.2 would kick in. Because we could have no people, and then we'd have to take either off the floor. We'd have one person, and as a commission say, let's wait and open it up until we get more people.
So I'm sorry, Christine, I apologize. What do you want to do to 10.1?
I would just like to say as a standard, as a baseline, is that we would like to have no off-the-floor nominations. When we are looking at board appointments, when we're looking at anything that requires a submission and a qualification period with Tracy.
Okay. So do we have a consensus of agreement that we should have the town staff put together a sentence that says that?
So you would just, in essence, restrict nominations from the floor unless 10.2 kicks in, where you would vote a different process.
So no nominations from the floor would be accepted unless otherwise is set forth herein, something like that. Okay.
Okay. Okay, 10.2, we just discussed. 10.3, any problems? Okay. Rule 11, my favorite rule, suspension of the rules. Does anybody have any problems with 11.1 or 11.2? Which just invalidates the last half hour. Okay. Well, good? You know, got all that?
So we have a consensus to just make the changes.
Make the
as
changes, and
discussed
then we'll bring it back
to next meeting.
in the February meeting and take a hard look at
In
it.
red line version, please?
Yep.
Would it be proper to ask for an adjournment so we can go watch the football game that starts at 8 o'clock, or do we need to go through the rest of this?
We're almost done.
Let's rip, yeah, we got the, all right, let's, town manager, Jamie?
My written report is in your backup. I'll just cover the highlights real quickly. The town attorney and I have discussed, we're coming up on the 5th year of a garbage contract, garbage services contract, and that's been an extended contract over several 5-year terms. And I believe the town attorney, in conjunction with us, believe that it may be proper to go out and do an RFP, just to be compliant with the IG and everybody else in terms of frequency. And just want to make sure that I have the consensus and direction of the commission to expend the time and energies to amass an RFP for garbage services, which will expire by contract at the 2019 fiscal year end. So we need about 4 or 6 months to kind of execute that whole process. And I want to make sure you're comfortable with us doing that.
Is that a yes?
Is that a consensus
I don't
yes
know.
to?
Do we need to do this by legalities?
Well, here's the issue that we have. Okay, the original agreement that was executed in 2009 was bid out and said it's for one 5-year term. with one 5-year renewal. When the contract was amended in 2014, for the second, for the first or for the 5-year renewal, the contract was also amended to, for lack of a better term, to allow automatic renewals. And so that's what I have an issue with. And so that's why my recommendation
But
is.
is it a Brian issue, or is it a legal issue?
Well, I think it's a legal issue, not that it's, is it a major legal issue? No, it's not. But when you go out to bid and you say, this is what it's going to be, and then midstream, we kind of change what we had said in the initial bid, that is the legal issue that I'm raising.
So we're looking for advice from you. You're saying we need to RFP.
My recommendation is that you go out for a bid, yes.
Okay.
And if we're lucky enough, which we won't because our contract's not as large, Delray did this with their waste management contract and shaved $2 million off of it, so.
Wow.
Used the exact same person, but they were able to take $2 million off just because it went out to bid.
$2 million?
$2 million. Same folks we used.
Much larger scale
Jamie,
than our
you have-
contract.
you have
We don't even have
to
2
sue
million
for
in the
it.
contract, so I can't
They're
say
going to be
2
paying
million.
us by the end of this. Right?
So is the
So we have a
consensus?
consensus, yes.
Is the consensus to go ahead and go through that process? Okay, great. And of course, that'll come back to you in many steps along the way. I just wanted to mention, I'm happy to report that under the beach crossover project, this morning, we received our DEP permit to reconfigure the beachway crossover to a more natural and naturally planted dune configuration. Is that in the?
No.
Okay. I think you all have a copy of that in front of you.
Yes.
That's now been, we're working with Rob Barron, who's a coastal management and dune expert, and we have the blessing of DEP to move forward.
And I would just like to thank Jamie for gathering together the team he did at DEP and Rob Barron. Rob Barron is the man for the state. He's the guy. And he's taken a personal interest, and I think residents will be happy and stunned to know. I was stunned. He hasn't really investigated our beaches for 10 years, and he said that our dune growth and extension eastward is fabulous. He was startled. He says we're doing much better than surrounding towns.
Yeah, I do need to get consensus from you all that you're comfortable, because we did say we'd bring this back when we got the approval for us to move forward on it. So I want to make sure everybody is
Let's
good
move
with what
forward. Move
DEP
forward.
approved, and away we'll go.
Yep.
Okay.
Consensus?
Yep.
Okay.
Everybody good. Okay, lastly, just wanted to bring up a couple quick items related to P and Z. Because of the uptick and all the new code changes, we are talking to a professional planner to look at the idea of improving our zoning review and those components of plan sets that come through for building and land development permits. That is a pass-through expense to the applicant, so it won't cost more to the town, but we're awaiting a proposal there to provide a more formalized background report on zoning and building related issues, both to the commission as well as to the P and Z and to the applicants themselves. So we will be bringing that back to you as soon as we receive that.
So Jamie, the cost to the landowner or homeowner will remain the same, it's just the money will be going to a different entity? Is that basically it?
Pretty much, yes. There will be a fixed fee established and brought to you as a proposal in the fee schedule for those levels of review. It is a pass-through expense under the building department enterprise zone concept. So the actual numbers will be brought back to you, but they're pretty equivalent to what's in place today. Just a higher level of professionalism perhaps applied to the nuances of zoning code and the changes that we've been establishing. There were two motions by your P and Z that they are looking for consensus from this body to move forward on. One was, there was a lot of discussion, and there was a realization that our ordinances, which for years have prevented flat roof buildings, has created an industry of imitation flat roof buildings with very large parapets to make them look like a flat roof. And the result of that is the massing of buildings has gotten much larger. And the board came to the realization that perhaps if they just allowed certain kinds of flat roofs, that would scale back that problem in the town rather than forcing everybody to fake a flat roof when they have to have a pitched roof. So their recommendation on a 5-0 was to seek your feedback or your direction as to working on an ordinance, directing the town attorney to work on an ordinance with us that would allow certain elements of flat roofs to take place.
So,
Is that part of this report?
No, it's an addition that I'm just walking on to get some feedback
Yeah.
from you.
so when you say 5-0, that's startling. So Mark Marsh
was
on board.
the most reluctant warrior that came to this decision, yes.
Wow.
As
That's
the
impressive.
professional architect on the board.
Yeah.
And that was after much discussion at the P and Z level about why the houses are getting larger and larger with the parapets that disguise or masquerade the pitch requirements of the roofs. And there's plenty of examples up and down the town where that's been a concern to folks.
So
I would have liked to have seen some pictures for that. I mean, I don't routinely go to the PNC meetings, and I'm not disagreeing with a 5-0, I wouldn't
Yeah.
ever overrule. But when things are brought forward, because they could have some pretty overarching, long-lasting effects, I would really like to be able to see, this is an example of why we're doing something like that.
Absolutely, but the reason it's coming just for your consensus right now is there's a lot of work in developing the ordinance as well as those examples, as well as vetting that through the P and Z, that we kind of need your nod to
Jamie's
do.
has permission to work with the town attorney to put together an ordinance that goes with the new P and Z thoughts on flat roofs. I don't have a problem with that, because you can
I
nix
don't
the
either.
ordinance if you don't like it.
Yeah, but I mean, why spend money on an ordinance if you haven't conceptually seen what's going on? It's just, when there's large changes, I would, oh, here we go, ding ding.
Rick Carey, 39 Spanish River Drive. The discussion was a process like this, to have P&Z, before giving it to the town attorney, to go through and review what would be the correct parapet height. The idea is now that I think it's 35 feet is our max, so we're getting parapets up to 35 feet. Possibly if we allow a flat roof, it's a lower number than 35 feet. But there's work to getting through this, seeing what it is. So I wanted to make sure we weren't just running on a tangent that there was no support for at the town commission level.
And obviously, any ordinance you guys would heavily scrutinize.
It'd be a lot of debate.
They would have to under the land planning agency components of our code, and they would have to bring that back to you for first and second readings if they're moving in the direction.
This is a significant change for the town, but and as Mark Marsh was the reluctant supporter, is that we've had a backdoor flat roof system going on for a number of years that's not serving the town well.
So do we have a consensus to instruct?
Not for me.
You don't like flat roofs?
I don't like the parapets and I don't like the flat roof. And so I think we need to try and see if we can get somewhere in between. But I'm not in favor of allowing flat roofs to reduce the height of the parapets.
So Brian, if it's a 4-1, can we instruct Jamie to?
Yeah, well, the
We don't have
majority, 3 to
consensus.
2. Yes, no, I mean, you know, if there's 3 of you, you
We
can.
have a 4-person consensus. Is that accurate? We'll have a 3.
And I guess if I can modify the request a little bit on the flat roofs, and I think it's what Mr. Carey was kind of saying, it's not so much maybe to allow flat roofs, but it's to start to examine that, because what P&Z is seeing is the backdoor method of the parapets are becoming higher, and you're seeing massive flat walls now where and I think Mr. Marsh is finally starting to realize, look, I would rather maybe see a flat roof than rather just a massive flat blank wall here, where you've got a much higher parapet to cover things. So I believe that's what P&Z is trying to kind of look at to see is there some balance that we can try to achieve.
I think you summed it up, Christine, when you said it moved 5-0. These people spent a lot of time, and they started out against the idea.
You know, and they're a very conscientious board. I've just seen, as you said, you know, Rick, it's a game changer in terms of the character of the houses that are existing currently as the majority of our town. So if you don't have to build a 35-foot parapet to cover your 30-foot flat roof, some people are just as tricky enough if you take away the parapet and say you can have the flat roof. Now there's flat roofs at 35. So, I mean, it just...
But that'll be the point of the ordinance. The ordinance will stop that.
Well, all you need to do is to take a photographic tour of Key Biscayne, and you'll see where this is leading to the flat roofs or the parapets. And I'm sorry, I'm not changing my mind.
So what
for
is
whatever
your
it's worth.
You got 3 too, so...
So you're a 2 now. Before it was 4-1.
I'm just hesitant of it. I think I'd like to see it fleshed out a little bit more before we spend legal monies on coming up with an ordinance.
Planning and zoning doesn't want an ordinance, they want to work on it.
Well, no, I just heard that we're giving permission for an ordinance, and
In conjunction with P&C to come up with the wording for a flat roof.
I think what's going on right now, I need to restate who I am. It is exactly why we asked for this to be talked about, because if the consensus of the ordinance passing commission here is that they don't like what's going on now, then we need to address it in a way that creates sloped roofs or no parapets. There's all kinds of directions we can take if that's what the town wants. I know in the 6 months I've been on the P&Z, we're seeing a lot of the parapet style roofs. That's part of the trend in the architecture. I'm not a big fan, but it's what we're seeing. So we need to do something about what's occurring.
And maybe it's just a timing issue. If this had been in our package and it had a little bit more backup versus then a 2-minute read off the paper, and that's, you know, now go to drafting an ordinance on.
Well, maybe the wording I use is incorrect. Yes, the majority of the commission would like you to further explore with the town attorney the concept of parapets and flat roofs, to come to a definition that possibly will be created into an ordinance of what's acceptable.
And is it correct to surmise that this commission is not a big fan of the flat roof style for our town?
I already,
That would-
you know where I stand.
That's helpful direction. Yeah, thank you.
The other request that came out of the planning and zoning, which also carried on a motion of 5-0 on the planning and zoning is, and we've talked about this several times before, is the concept of affording the planning and zoning commission more teeth, so to speak, in the up or down vote or the approval or disapproval of concept plan review that come before them. Currently, they are a review committee with no actionable power other than to recommend that their comments are passed to the applicant through the building official. And they've asked what the temperature of the commission is to consider working on some language or the ability to have some sort of up or down vote or some sort of a little bit more input into approvals on applications, land development applications at the concept plan review level. And I think the attorney could probably embellish that a little if I'm not covering it technically.
No, I think that's the initial, ask if there is any appetite to come up with modifications to this concept plan review ordinance that would allow them in certain situations to be able to, once they, I guess, give direction, that direction must be followed by the applicant, Otherwise, they could have the ability to appeal up to the commission, but it's my understanding in speaking, and hearing the commission, I guess, kind of give their comments in the past that you would like to fetter that discretion. So I think there's still kind of the P&Z Commission, and Mr. Carey can comment on this as well, that it's sometimes, they have a lot of debate and they make a lot of good suggestions there, but the applicant is not required in any way, shape, or form to act on those suggestions. So that's the issue that we're dealing with.
So we dealt with this thoroughly, substantially, and exhaustively a year or two ago. And we arrived at the conclusion, and which actually became part of the codes now for parking and all that gave teeth, so to speak. It all started with the P&Z, the parking restrictions, and what's the other restriction we just put in?
Green space.
Green space, okay. So the reason why last time you guys didn't get any teeth is because you wanted the entire pie. So I would think if the P&Z comes to us with two specific planning items or architectural items that you want to have teeth with, or just a limited list of where you want teeth, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Is this overall subjective that you don't like to look at a house feel that I think the commission didn't want a committee to have that kind of power, just to reject the house because they didn't like the fenestration, they didn't like the way it looked. So if there's specific elements that we can put teeth into, I'm not opposed to that.
Thanks. We can work on that.
Does that help you?
It was well described, it is that we can often see people coming before us only because it's a box to check, and they're not listening or doing anything beyond. Then they end up back and build just whatever they wanted.
Well, maybe thinking outside the box, and this would be something you discuss in committee. I mean, is there another way to give you guys teeth? Like if you guys don't like the house, rather than suggesting, maybe there's a separate code that says if the Architectural Review Board votes 3-2 that they don't like the house, there has to be a 3-month delay before anything can take place, which will then give you teeth without giving you catastrophic teeth.
If I'm,
You see what I mean?
There may be something like that. I don't know the delay is the right
I may,
answer. Right.
what is my understanding that we have talked about is a concept review where the architect would come before the P&Z with a concept of what the house or the building is going to look like, with photographs of pictures to the left, right, front, and back of that house. And then the P&Z could then look at that. How is that new building going to interface in the community on that street? And if it's a block house with a 35-foot parapet and a flat roof on top of it, and they're put it in next to two existing colonial-style homes or something, then the P&Z would have the ability to say, well, that doesn't really fit into that street, that particular community, and we suggest that you make these changes and come back to us. So that is a no with a comeback. Or if it's something that is just totally out of style with that community, you could just say no, and in it they would have the ability to come appeal to the commission. I want to put in this block house in the middle of these colonial. Because everything I've ever heard from anyone in this community is we want to keep Ocean Ridge the same. And you do it by house by house by house. So that's
I think
what
it's
I
well
was.
stated, and I think that's everyone's intention here, and we've no examples that we can point to, maybe one right out the window here that doesn't fit what we see the vision of Ocean Ridge.
The important part is that you have to look at the properties to the left, right, front, and back to see how that, you can't just look at the individual house and say, well, that looks okay. How's it going to look on that street? How's it going to change the concept of that street? And that's what I think P&Z needs to have the authority to say, yes, it fits in. It may be a different style home than what you have, but yes, it fits in with the houses next door to it. Or it may be so out of contact that you just it just doesn't work.
Right, the problem with that is subjective. We went down this path previously. So what instructions do you think we've given you?
Number one summary is that we should be working with staff to come out with a recommendation to you that you can respond to. This is a little more open-ended than was fair to you this evening. That we don't want to have a system where there can be unilateral subjective changes. So we need to have it within guidelines, and there should be an opportunity for some appeal. I think with the town attorney staff, we can work hard to come up with something, and it'll probably be 2-3 months before we're back to you. And then you can modify it as you wish.
Okay. I would think just limited and egregious, that kind of approach.
I had written down your direct quote of limited list of specific elements. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jamie, anything
That's all
else?
I had. No, that's all I had.
Great. Brian, town attorney?
Nothing.
Okay, the police chief, who is Lieutenant Jones, is sitting in for.
Thank you, Commission. Attached, you find the monthly reports for the fire rescue, obviously Boynton Fire EMS activity reports, as well as the police department's activity reports. I would like to bring to everyone's attention that today we did have a rash of vehicle burglaries overnight. It equated to approximately 11 vehicles, which were split between the north end and the south end. The reason I bring this to your attention is not because I'm proud that we had 11 burglaries, but every single vehicle was left unlocked and belongings were left inside. So please, if you leave it, lock it. There are several videos that I watched myself today before the meeting, which were locked vehicles that the criminals actually came to, checked the doors, and then walked to the neighbor's house where they were successful in stealing belongings. So a locked vehicle is successful in deterring crime. In addition to that, I will share with the commission the fact that although the license plate recognition system has not been 100% operational in the sense that we're not using it as a monitoring tool yet, it was very helpful to us this morning in identifying a suspect vehicle. So we do have a suspect vehicle, and we do have 2 suspects at this time that we are working with to try to, resolve the situation. But I wanted to bring that to your attention. In addition, the commission last month approved the hire of 3 potential candidates, 2 of which we have moved forward with. I would like to introduce those 2 to the commission. We have Mr. William Ranta, who joins us from the Collier County Sheriff's Office. He lives locally in the Boca area. Well, I'm sorry, he's actually from Boca, lives in Boynton. So he has joined our team. And then we have Keith Ramirez, who has never been a police officer previously, has just graduated the academy within the last year and a half or so.
On behalf of the town, I'd like to welcome you both.
If the commission has any questions about any of the activity reports, I'll be more than happy to explain them to the best of my abilities, or any other questions that are irrelevant to those reports.
Question?
Yeah, I just had something real quick that I had mentioned to Hal, and I don't know if he mentioned it to you, but if you look at the vehicle mileage report, I don't know if you ever noticed it, but cars that idle is like driving a car. So what happens is, these cars are only going like, say, 20,000 miles, but the engine is being used 100,000 miles because it's idling for 80,000 so miles. They do an equation, it's like 33 miles. So what I had asked Hal is, hybrids and electric cars, they don't idle, they shut right down.
Right.
So that he's gonna look in it. I mean, there's a lot of negative things to that though, and he's gonna look into it. But I just wanna let the
The
commission
chief
know.
and I did both actually look into that prior to the meeting. We found that the cost of the hybrid vehicles, currently there's only one available in the police market. That's actually made by Ford, and it's a sedan. So we would immediately lose our ground clearance that we currently have with the SUVs, which is important to us because of flooding. We do have some areas that we have localized flooding. So that's a concern, obviously, but the cost of the car is approximately $7,000 more than the cost of the current vehicles that we're operating and the warranties typically do not cover electrically related issues. And I will say that the platform, I learned over the weekend, the platform for the new Ford police vehicle that is hybrid is actually the Ford Fusion platform, which was actually built in 2010. And that platform has had a number of electrical issues that Ford has publicized. So we're a little hesitant to go down that path with a fleet car, only because we don't know what the future will bring, and they haven't really established a history of success or not. I did speak to the chief before the meeting, and he brought to my attention that he actually spoke and met with one of the Ford folks at the police chiefs conference this morning. And even the Ford individual told him flat out that they're not seeing a whole lot of purchases with those on the roadside of police operations, but they're seeing it more in investigative type vehicles and administrative vehicles, just based on what they're seeing in sales. And one of the main factors was that the cost of the battery pack is estimated to be at minimum $12,000 for that vehicle. So he thought that that might be one of the contributing factors that would be, you know, a deciding factor for many organizations to do an entire fleet, or even have, you know, a large number of those being used on a daily basis. So I don't know if that answers some of the.
No, I think it's 2, 3, 4
Yeah,
years away.
It sounds
I
like a
just wanted
wonderful
to
idea, because you
kinda keep it in your
gotta
eye.
take that cost versus the maintenance on 100,000.
Right.
And then it just sounds like you're a man ahead of your time, you know, it's just 2 or 3 years away.
You got one too.
Okay. Building official Wayne Cameron.
Got the report in front of you if you have any questions. The only thing I just want to add tonight is that we've got, well, I've got an increase greater than normal site visits to properties. Their work has been done without permits. So I just want to remind residents that please reach out to the building department if you've got questions in terms of any renovations that you're thinking about. A lot of these items do require permits, so please take advantage of the ability to reach out to us before you start projects, and so we can assist you. Apart from that, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to help answer that.
Well, one thing, I was talking to the building official, and I'd never heard this rule. Maybe everyone in town knows this rule but me. A general rule of thumb is if you're doing a renovation or improvement that exceeds 100 square feet or $1,000, check with Wayne. It seems like a pretty simple rule. And Wayne's here to assist residents accomplish their goal, not to obstruct them. Okay.
Thank you.
Good point. Tracy, is this in our newsletter or on our website?
The $100?
Not necessarily that, but just a reminder to folks to be.
We can put a reminder in, but we do have something on the website that has the general permitting guidelines and what requires a permit and what does not.
But I think to the mayor's point, it covers a lot more than people actually anticipate.
Yeah. And people, then they get into trouble and it's a big mess.
A compliment for Wayne is that he's also now become involved in the drainage systems and flooding, working hand in glove with the town engineer. So I appreciate that very much. It's a good thing. We need that.
Okay, so one last item, Ocean Ridge zip code. This is something that I discussed with Jamie and town staff. The basic reason to have the zip code is to make Ocean Ridge more exclusive and differentiated from Boynton. This will help with Airbnbs, vacation rentals by owners, sober homes, and also perhaps mail delivery as Boynton starts more developments. There's going to be more Coconut Lanes, more Ocean Breeze Highway, but we're going to start having conflicting names with the same zip code. So I like the exclusivity of the zip code. I think when people are doing Google searches for an Airbnb and they go to a zip code, you know, it's going to differentiate ourselves immediately. They're going to end up at a window that hopefully we can then create a little more resistance to the various outside influences that are coming our way. That's all the positives with it. The negative is, it's gonna be a 2-year journey. It's going to take some staff time, unless a very excited resident would like to take the project on with the help of staff. I simply don't have time to do it. I won't. So that's kind of the direction. It's not something that's going to be pushed through. It's going to be a slow-moving process. Representative Mike Caruso will back it, will help us, and we also need people in Washington to help us. It's a big change. The town staff dug up an article with a great headline. Where Miami Lakes, not Hialeah, a new zip code may finally reflect the difference. And that's what we're trying to accomplish, and they accomplished it in Hialeah, in Miami Lakes. So that's the thought process. I see one public comment, and then we'll just go to see if the commissioners have an appetite for the town staff to slowly engage in this.
Christine Schulte, 7 Adams Road. Are we changing the zip code we have?
It'll take a long time.
No, but let me ask you, so far, since we were relocated here in 91, I've spent my life, discussing the darn things with a computer that, we live in Boynton. I mean, 1,000 times.
Yep.
Now we have 33435-6203. Isn't that final?
I don't know what the final is. No, we will be going after 33435. It's a very long process, Christine.
But don't we
Nobody's
have
mail's
it
gonna
set
get lost.
right now? I'm just
Excuse me?
saying, don't we have the 33435-6203 is an Ocean Ridge zip code, I was told, -6203.
Who said that?
Right, exactly. So why go through all this trouble when?
Because no one's using the, I don't know how many
6203?
digits it is.
Well, I've been
And
told.
it doesn't accomplish the task. If somebody's doing a Google search,
But
they
it
just put in
seems to me,
33435.
a huge project for
It is a very
something
big
we
project.
already have it set to differentiate with over the bridge. You know what I'm saying?
I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
No one uses the extensions, just mailers and marketing people.
Well, it'd be much easier to continue to start using the extensions. I've used them. I just lost my driver's license at Fort Lauderdale Airport. I asked for a replacement online, and they had the zip code wrong. They have it right now. It's in the mail. But isn't it easier to stick to what we have, -6203, than spend 2 years?
It's like two different issues. It's the extension is different than the actual use of the 33435. Let's
So
call
we're
it that.
looking at switching 33435?
It'll be a very long process.
Holy cow, and costly?
Just for clarification, it's an application process to the U.S. Postal Service, and often it gets involved with congressional offices in Washington. It's a very long, arduous, slow, community-driven process.
Yeah.
So, staff, it's not a project that staff could take on and whip out in a month or two. It's something that has to be ongoing in terms
So
of
when we
exploration.
forget the -6203?
No, that's
It's
assigned by the
exclusive.
post office.
Yes, I know it is, yeah.
So,
right. I thought it was set and done to differentiate this town from the other town.
On paper.
So we,
Okay, so
okay,
thank you, Christine.
all right, thanks.
So Jamie just summed it up well. It's not that we're going to change the zip code. Do we want to investigate the application to change the zip code? I'm a fan of it, obviously. And it's a question of if any other commissioners agree.
What I read is it looks like it will be costly. Don't we have to have our own distribution center, our own little post office, so we'd have to hire somebody?
There's subsets in the rules that get around that. It's way complicated.
Okay, so there's more than just what we've gotten, okay.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Conceptually, I like the idea. I just like to know what are the cost ramifications. Is this a $50,000 initiative, a 5-year $250,000 initiative? Does it take 3 trips to Washington? I don't know.
So do we at least have a consensus to see what the application is and the cost of the application?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
I would
You're
charge
just
Jamie
exploring.
with finding out.
Yeah.
We'll find that out, get a copy of the application, talk to the congressional
Yeah.
office locally and see what their experience is with time and energy.
And the other thing is you might find out that a neighboring community is also very interested in this process, and we could help each other. Okay. We are at the end of the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year. Go Patriots. Go Alabama. And meeting adjourned.
Alabama.
I'm so tired now.
Clemson. Sorry.